Is there a motion to open case number 3580M?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We're here for a public hearing to be held in Town Hall in the Great Hall, 3rd floor, 10 Pearl Street, on May 2nd, 2013. This is a continuance for the petition of Elliot Snyder, trustee of the Villages of Goddard Highlands Trust, presented by Peter L. Freeman, Esquire, case number 3580M, to remove condition 11 from the July 30th, 2002 comprehensive permit issued to the Villages of Goddard Highlands Trust, as amended by the agreement and stipulation for entry of judgment. Housing Appeals Committee, docket number 03-23, pursuant to the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40B, Section 20 through 23, as amended in the Town of Stoughton Zoning Board of Appeals Rules and Regulations governing comprehensive permits, as amended for the project known as the Villages of Goddard Highlands, in order to remove the requirement that 32 of the 104 dwellings shall be age-restricted to ownership by persons aged 55 and over. The project is located on approximately 90.33 acre site between Washington Street, Route 138 off Kelsey Drive, and Daly Drive extension off Eston Road. Further identified in Assessors Plan 73, lots 40, 41, 43, 50 through 55, inclusive. Assessors Plan 73, lots 57 through 81, inclusive. Assessors Plan 61, lots 90 through 151, inclusive. Assessors Plan 60, lots 23, 25, 26, 27, 28, 30, in a general business RC and RA in said Stoughton. The petitioner is representative or any other persons desiring to be heard in this matter should appear at the time and place designated. Sherman L. Epro, Chairman. Let's see. We have all the board members that were sitting here. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Peter Freeman, Freeman Law Group, representing the applicant, and we have the applicant and team here: Elliot Schneider, Candace Gordon, Jonathan White, our engineer Jim Pavlik. Not that he's going to make a presentation, but just in case there are questions. We also, as you know, at the last hearing, you basically continued until this evening for two reasons. One, to retain your own peer review consultant on the financial analysis, which you've done with Ed Marchant, and we received a copy, as I'm sure you did, of his report. Secondly, you asked and we agreed to do an updated traffic study. We also completed that and we sent it to you. I want to make sure that's part of the official record. We sent it, filed it, and I assume it is part of the record. We were going to have Mr. Scully, who did that report, basically summarize it for you first, but I don't know why he's not here yet. So I assume you'd want to hear from Mr. Marchant. Our intent, before you do that, again, I'm presuming you would want to do that, and then hopefully give us time when Mr. Scully arrives to go over it. From our viewpoint, it's really fairly straightforward and simple, based on Mr. Marchant's report and also based on the traffic report showing no negative impact. We believe we've met what is both legally required, and also we've complied with your request to show that we can't proceed with the project with the age restriction and have it be feasible. It would be uneconomic and very difficult. And then in terms of any mitigation, to the extent that any adverse impacts might arise to the level of a local concern, which would allow you to deny it in some fashion, we believe that we've met that standard as well, and so we don't see negative impacts from the granting of our request. So there may be questions later, but if it's acceptable to the chairman and the board, I can either answer questions now, or if you would like me to summarize the traffic before you hear from Mr. Marchant, but because he's here, maybe it makes sense for you to hear from him. Okay. Mr. Scully is walking up the stairs, so if you'd rather hear on traffic first, as part of our presentation, that's fine, whichever way you want to handle it. Might be nice to to have him report, and, I think might be a fairly narrow scope of questions, but
We'll give him a couple of minutes to get up here
okay.
and do the
I think
traffic.
he's younger than me, so it wouldn't take as long as it takes me to get up the stairs. Actually, I take the elevator.
Push yourself so that the secretary can get it.
Thank you. For the record, my name is William Scully with Green International, and the traffic consultant for this project. And if I may, I know we submitted the traffic study, but go through a brief presentation, a summary of it, if that's okay. Just for some background, I am a transportation engineer, been doing this work for about 35 plus years. Some of that work has been actually in Stoughton. I don't think it's been a while since I've been before the ZBA. Registered professional engineer, member of the Institute of Transportation Engineers.
Can you talk into the mic a little bit more? It's hard to hear over here.
Okay.
Thank
Work that I do includes performing studies and design, and it's covered a range of types of projects for cities and towns, Massachusetts DOT, as well as private entities. And the private entities typically, as you are aware, as they go through the planning process, need some type of permit, either through a driveway permit from the state or site plan review and site approvals from the local agencies. For about 20 years or so, I had my own firm, partnered with other people, and in 2002 I oversaw the original study for this site and this project. And recently was asked to update that information, I believe at the board's request. In conducting the update, we really did a full traffic study again, and it involved a number of steps. Data collection and inventories. We were out in March of this year doing most of that, including traffic volume counts, collecting new safety-related data, including crash experience at the study intersections, and then you develop forecasts for the project and complete your analysis. The study area, we essentially kept the same as the 2002 study. And that was described in the report. This map wasn't in the report specifically, but I think I blew it up so it would be a little more clear. But here is Route 138, Washington Street. Kelsey Drive is in this location, and Atkinson Avenue, and the extension is in here. Over on the other side is Sumner Street. And the project site area is in this area. And as you know, it's split into two portions, with a portion accessing Eston Road and a portion accessing Kelsey Drive. As I said, we collected traffic volume data in March. It included new peak period traffic counts at the study intersections. And also it included machine counts, which you may have seen tubes across the road for a couple of days on both Washington Street and Sumner. While we were basically conducting a complete traffic study and an impact analysis of the project, a lot of it was because in 2002 we had analyzed a project with 112 units of housing, and before you was a modification to go to 104 units of housing. And obviously, you know, as that started going through, everyone recognized that the last time we looked at anything out there from a traffic point of view was 2002. So we did include some comparison of the 112 to 104. Probably since 2002, there has been probably 2 updates to the trip generation models and databases from the Institute. There's been some modification to the analysis techniques. So some of that might be reflected in either the forecast or the results of the intersection analysis. On the roadway system itself, there really isn't much change from the 10+ years ago. I mean, Washington Street is the same. It's a 2-lane road. Sumner's the same thing. The neighborhood is, for all intents and purposes, the same network that was out there then. There's probably more stop sign control within the neighborhood itself before you reach Sumner or come out to Washington Street. There's been some additional development in the region, probably more notably to the south, down in the eastern, over the line. And we've taken all of that into account. The new traffic count data showed, just for informational purposes, about 13,700 cars a day on Washington Street, and it was extremely similar to what we counted on in the same location in 2002. I mean, extremely similar, and we have the data comparison in the report. Sumner Street, we observed 3,200 cars a day, and that was substantially lower than we counted back in 2002 for some reason. I can't explain that, other than, you know, there certainly has been a large reduction in or stabilization in traffic volumes throughout the region, throughout the state over the last 5-6 years, largely due to the economy's down, so a lot of travel's down. Gas prices are up, a lot of travel's down for that reason. You know, shift to transit, etc. I don't think that explains the large reduction over in Sumner, but that's what we saw over a couple-day period, as well as the peak period counts, where we do that manually. So someone's sitting at an intersection counting traffic. And looking at the crash data over the most recent 3-year period, very few reported crashes at our study intersections. I would expect that large, you know, definitely in the neighborhood, but even the intersections on Washington Street had very low reported crash experience. As we got into now assessing the impact or the differences in the projects, we project out 5 years, which was similar to what we did back in the old study, but now it's starting at this time period. We're projecting out to 2018. We take into account some growth, even though really historically the last 5-6 years has been very little on-ground volume growth in the region. We did incorporate a background growth rate for 5 years. We also added in some of the development specifically that we would expect or studies in Easton have projected to head north up by our site. So we've built that in as well as the background growth. And then we project our own traffic. And this information is in the report. What we've projected, and with this, it's 104 units, the same number that were in the previous study over on Eston Road, and then the 62 units off of Kelsey. We've broken out each section separately because there's no through traffic, so essentially it's 2 separate analyses. And then in total, Off of the Eston Road section, we're projecting, and I'll just summarize the peak hours because that's where our analysis is based. But we're projecting 39 vehicle trips to be generated in the morning and 48 vehicle trips to be generated in the afternoon. It's 42 units of housing on that side. And on the Kelsey Drive side, it's 62 units of housing. We're projecting 53 trips in the morning peak hour and 68 trips in the afternoon peak hour. Typically, for residential development, as you all would probably surmise, is that in the morning, most of your traffic is leaving a residential area and heading to work, heading to school. And in the afternoon, it's sort of the reverse. Not as much of a reverse as the afternoon. There's a lot more activity going on in terms of the retail environment and different things. But most traffic is entering the sites in the afternoon. What we also showed in the report was a comparison with the 2002 study. We just took what was reported in the 2002 based on the models that were available then and compared it to the current proposal with the current models, and we'll see a reduction of somewhere between 5.5% to 9% in terms of vehicle trips if you go from the 112 to the 104, with all of that reduction taking place on the Kelsey Drive side. Let's see. Once we estimate the number of trips, then we go and start to estimate how we feel that traffic will travel on the roadway system. So they'll leave either Kelsey Drive or Eston Road, and where are they coming from? For this particular analysis, we had the census data work trip of a resident of Stoughton, where they work. It doesn't tell us how they get there, but if they're going to Boston, if they're working in Canton, Norwood, Bridgewater, I mean, so we know where approximately everyone is based on that year's census working, and then we look at, okay, if you're living in this side of the development, how would you travel towards that direction or come from? And if you're living in this portion of the development, what are the routes available for you to, again, travel to and from? So we did each site, as I said, separately, projecting how they would enter onto Washington Street or reach Sumner, and then where they go from there. And we took into account Route 24, where the interchanges are, where you'd be coming from, and where it might be easier to get to and from some of those interchanges, as well as going up towards the center where the rail station is, for an example, or 95 in that direction. And then ultimately we develop a network diagram of that peak hour traffic flow. Morning peak hour, afternoon peak hour, typically used for residential, as they're usually the worst conditions on the roadway system during those time periods. The analysis showed that I'll just use this diagram just to point to certain areas, but again, on the map, Washington Street is over here, Sumner Street is over on here, Eston Road, Kelsey Drive, Atkinson Ave Extension. But the highest, our predicted highest level of increase is on Washington Street north of Atkinson Ave Extension, and the increase there during the peak hours will be approximately a vehicle per minute. So depending on the period, and the increases are in the report, we're around 58 or 70 in that range during the peak period, and that amounts to about an additional vehicle per minute. 20 to 25 vehicles to the south on Washington Street, under 20 vehicles in terms of increases on Sumner Street. Comparable levels of increases in impact as was in the 2002 study. The trip patterns we may have modified a bit with the newer information on the work trip. In terms of intersection analysis, we conduct a level of service analysis, and that has a qualitative set of criteria, A through F, which you may be aware of. Level of service A, meaning it would be very low, minimal, short delays. Level of service F, higher delays. For unsignalized intersections, the analysis would take into account the flow along the major street, the demand coming out of the minor street, and what it does is it looks for those gaps within the major street traffic flow and then makes an estimate of delay, and then we turn that into levels of service. You can have a lot of capacity to accommodate additional traffic, and depending on the level of flow on the major street, you may be delayed a bit to turn left coming out of a side street, which you would be tending to be on Washington Street, but still have plenty of capacity to be accommodated. And that's basically what the analysis showed, is that at each of the intersections that we studied, and I mean, we did look at a couple of the internal neighborhood intersections because they're on our network. We counted them, and they're very low volume within the neighborhood anyway, so it's all operating at level service A, very short delays. But the three key ones, Washington at Kelsey, Washington at Atkinson, Sumner at Atkinson, for the most part, very little difference between going from a no build to a build, and again, because we started sort of from scratch doing a full traffic, we compared a no build as if the project didn't exist, even though portions of it are under construction now. And then we did a build with all the projects, so you could see the level of change or impact. With the exception of one of the time periods for the Kelsey Drive intersection, all the intersections, very little change between the no build and the build. There may be a change from a level service D to a level service E, but a change of about 5 or 6 average seconds in average delay. Kelsey during one period was operating at a level service C with the project, and goes to a level service E with the project in the other time period. All the intersections showing a substantial reserve capacity to be able to absorb and accommodate traffic exiting the side street. Compared to the 2002 study, it would be very similar, although you're going to see a little bit of reduction in vehicle delays if you compare that to the 2002 study. And some of that is due to less traffic, some of it is due to the analysis models, and the models are a little bit different and a little better at this time with more research. Sight distances, we looked at the sight distances at the study intersections. All the safety, the stopping sight distances are meet the design criteria. We looked at it for posted speed as well as a higher speed. When we collected the volumes, we also collected speed data out there, and while Washington Street has a posted speed of 45 miles an hour, we saw what's referred to as an 85th percentile speed, which is a speed where 85% of the people are driving either at or lower, and it's used a lot to set posted speeds. But we saw speeds on Washington maybe 47, 48 miles an hour for 85th percentile. So we did an analysis for both the posted at 45 and then a 50 mile per hour speed, and stopping sight distance criteria is fully satisfied at those two locations. Speeds are a little bit lower on Sumner, but again, stopping sight distance is satisfied there. We did, when we do a sight distance analysis, we not only look at people who are approaching those points of intersection, which is the most important. But we also look at if I'm sitting at the intersection and I'm looking out. And for the most part, that criteria is actually satisfied. But you see some vegetation here and there, and again, we were in March. As the leaves come on, there may be areas where within the street layout, you do some trimming. But we also suggested, just to enhance things, to put some advance warning signs on the approaches to Kelsey and on the approaches to Sumner at Atkinson, just so motorists are reminded that there's an intersection coming up ahead. And that completes my presentation. Be happy to answer questions.
Mr. Malloy, you have any questions? Mrs. Mitchell?
Can you tell me what days you went out and did the study, please? The March.
The count days were March 13th and 14th.
What day of the week was that? Do you know? Thank you.
Wednesday and Thursday.
Right.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
And we've been out there on other days just to do field work and measurements.
Was there a reason that you didn't think any traffic would ever use the Atkinson and Daly Drive intersection? You have everyone using Eston Road?
Go to this one.
Up at the top.
We ended up looking at Eston and Atkinson, and then brought them down, Atkinson down to Sumner.
Right.
Now, there is a portion that takes a left onto Daly out to reach Atkinson Ave Extension if they're going north on Washington. We didn't study every single intersection within the neighborhood.
Well, I'm just wondering, it would be reasonable to think people might also take a right out of the site and go.
This one
that
right
way.
here? They may. And I mean, we've projected them through that intersection, so either they're stopping here or stopping there.
Right.
So,
So the reason I ask is it's a pretty dense residential area. There's a lot of kids running around. There's not any sidewalks. I mean, is there any sign? I thought you were recommending some signage on the Eston Road, but what about also Daly Drive around that access? And it's a decent number of cars that are being added into that area that hasn't been there before.
one reason why we were adding signs at the Eston Road was that it wasn't there. Some of the signs, but all the other intersections along Atkinson Ave did have stop sign control up and down, in all-way stop. So that's why we didn't recommend an additional sign like in that spot. Will vehicles potentially take a right and go that way? Yes. I mean, we know how many we've projected there. Again, we've projected them into our network at that location. The level of service is all going to be level service A there. I mean, I understand it's a dense neighborhood, but the volumes within the neighborhood are still very low level in terms of a level of service type of thing. And I'm not positive, but I don't recall in 2002 the town having all multi-way stops through that whole area, so my guess is you were using that multi-way stop as a way to manage speeds for the reason that you brought up. And we just didn't see it up in this location, which we thought,
Right.
you know, we should have something up there to be consistent within there.
Well, there's also, it's an interesting curve there on Daily Drive because it's basically a 90-degree angle. I mean, I just think it's going to get more use than it currently does with the development.
Is there something specifically
I'm just
that?
wondering if there's any type of signage that you think might be appropriate.
I'd be happy to go out and take a look at that. If,
The area that you mentioned where the level of service went from B to E,
yes.
is that of concern?
No, I mean, it is going to be a change because there's more delay. I mean, the site comes on to Kelsey Drive. So right now, we've got, you know, a limited number of homes that are on Kelsey Drive, and you're adding 62 homes out there. This is just the PM peak. And what happens is you have a single lane drive, and most of the traffic we predicted in that time period is going to take a right, but those left turn vehicles can have an effect on increasing delay. We're still going where it's going to end up, even though it goes to a level service E, and this is in the peak period. So in the off peak, it's going to be much less delay out there. Comparable to probably what's experienced at Atkinson Ave Extension now. So it's, yes, we're adding traffic. That's obviously going to increase the number of vehicles making turns and coming to a stop, so the delay is going to increase. So we go to an E, but the capacity, we're like 40% of the total capacity to accommodate vehicles coming out at that point. So it's substantial reserve capacity. It just means because of Washington Street volume, you have to wait a little longer for the gaps to be created for you to make a left or a right. So I think we were at like 39 seconds average delay. So some will be much lower, some might be a little higher.
Is there any mitigation or conditions that you could suggest that might change that?
I really wouldn't. You know, one thing that sometimes we do at intersections, and I probably look at it more on a high volume intersection that might not be a neighborhood street. Sometimes we will try to work in a right turn lane. So now you have a wider approach and you have a left and a right. So you bring down the average delay a little bit, but for a, you know, it's not a, even with our project, it wouldn't be substantially a high volume, considered a high volume roadway. You'd be creating more pavement out there. For residential streets, I tend to like to be a little bit narrower and make people turn in and out of them slower. So we didn't recommend anything. Now, and in addition, along that area, you do have either a culvert, you know, or a drainage brook coming down through that area. So, you know, widening either Atkinson Ave Extension or Kelsey could potentially impact that type of facility. But at that level of delay, I mean, we're seeing a level service C in the morning and E in the afternoon with a fairly low, eight vehicles projected to take a left. And in the capacity of it, if we were at capacity, based on the calculations, I might be a lot more concerned.
Okay.
But we're 40% of, so a substantial amount of reserve capacity to accommodate.
So the reason that we're reconvening right now is because there's a request to reduce the age restriction, and I didn't see where in your study that was addressed.
Glad I forgot. I knew I had one more board to show. This was not in the report.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
This was not in the report.
Right.
So And that, I mean, when we started, it was, can you update your 2002 report?
Right.
So we didn't introduce a variation that was not in that report. Here we've made an estimate of the age-restricted housing versus the current proposal. And the peak period changes of the current proposal, even at 104 units, will increase the traffic a little bit. You can see 10 vehicle trips in the morning with, it's probably comes out to 7 leaving, 3 going in, and 15 additional trips in the afternoon. So it's not a lot of, it's one vehicle trip every 4 or 6 minutes, depending on your peak hour, changing that restriction. The operating condition at the intersection would not change. The left turns entering, that's another movement that we analyze at these types of intersections. And all the left turn movement entering Kelsey or entering Atkinson or entering Atkinson from Sumner, all could make the movement with very short delay, level service A.
Is that chart that you just presented, or is there any sort of supplemental information that you can give to us
I
for the
can do that.
record?
I can do
just so
that.
that it's clear that that was also looked at?
I'll follow up with
Okay.
with that table.
Yep.
I didn't realize that I had to hand it in, but I will do that.
Sure. Great. No, I just think we should have it
I'll
for the record.
follow up
Okay.
tomorrow to get that
Thanks.
down.
I have no further questions.
Can you put your...
It's going to have a what? During the morning peak hour, we estimated exiting about a 22-second delay on average and 39 to 40-second delay during the afternoon peak hour, which the level service E criteria, which is an acceptable level of service during the peak times.
Not if you live there. But that's
Has a range of 35 to 50, as you pointed out, and we're going to be in that 39 to 40 second on average.
Okay. So they're going to have an acceptable yet, say, a 40-second delay during peak AM hours coming out of Kelsey, which state of fact. Okay. Then you said that I believe Atkinson Extension is already an E, and it's going to remain an E. And you said that the level of service is about 22 seconds.
For what?
This is on page 27. For a southbound left turn and about 38 seconds for a right turn. So my
I'm not sure where you're.
I'm on
looking.
27.
I'm on page 20. I'm not positive where you're.
Route
Are you-
138 at Atkinson Extension.
Okay. in
Future
the-
build, you got westbound is a 37.6.
which it is now anyway. It's, you said the number of
Oh,
cars.
okay, in the morning peak hour, under the build condition, we go to 37.6,
Right.
correct? Estimate. And then in the afternoon, we go to 47 from 40, but remain at level search
Right.
E.
So now if you go to figure 7, which is after page, after figure 6 and before figure 8, you don't have any distance between Kelsey Drive and Atkinson. It's probably about a mile, maybe a little less.
It's
Okay.
quite a distance. yes.
So basically what's happening is Kelsey Drive, taking a right turn, if I'm reading your other pages correct, is going from 7 to 34 right turns in peak hours in the morning.
No, that's, 7,
7 to 34.
you're on figure 7?
I think your existing said 7. Figure 2, am I reading that right?
Yes. Yeah,
And then your figure 7 is showing that now you're going up to 34 right turns. I just want to,
that's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
now, they're going to have a 40-second wait to take that right turn during peak. They're going to go north on 138, probably a mile, and come to Atkinson. Atkinson's going to have 63 cars coming out there at the same time, okay? You don't show, you say in your report that Route 138 can handle the traffic. I agree with you. But I believe there's going to be a backup, which is not mentioned in your traffic study at all, from Kelsey to Atkinson extension on 138. You got 63 cars.
But from what?
Hmm?
It's going to be a backup from what?
People coming up, trying to get out of Atkinson extension.
Um,
If you did your traffic study, I don't know who did it for you or if you did it yourself, but Atkinson extension in the mornings
mhm.
has a backup sometimes of 8 to 12 cars coming down that windy road to get on 138.
Depending on,
Very difficult.
yeah, depending on which, that left turn, if someone's
Yeah.
coming down, take a left,
If
and they're
you're
going to
taking-
hold
If
people
someone's
up.
taking a left in front of you, you really
Yeah,
aren't.
so,
what I'm saying is you're adding 63 cars
mhm.
from Kelsey to Atkinson.
No, we're not adding 63 cars. Okay, here's what we're adding.
7 to 63.
We're adding 27 cars, if you want to go through it this way. Going from existing to the future build,
Yep.
with the homes built, which they're approved to be built, but we're adding 27 right turns onto Kelsey to head north.
Right,
They're going to be on the Washington Street traffic stream.
right.
They're moving right along.
No, they're not.
Well, they're moving with,
They're moving,
they're moving.
right, but they're not
I
moving.
I'm not implying
I
they,
take that road every day. They're not moving readily, but that's not why I'm bringing
okay.
this up.
So those additional vehicles are included in our analysis of the Atkinson Ave extension intersection. We've built them
For
all
the
in.
delay.
So whatever delay, so once the vehicles leave Kelsey and get on Washington, they're not theoretically delayed. They're certainly not delayed by, I can't get onto Washington Street. They're moving, they're only going to be delayed if someone up ahead, there's delay in the center, or delay, someone stops to take a left turn on Washington, no one can
Yeah,
get
right.
by, things like that.
Right. They're taking a left turn.
They've been incorporated, the
Right.
people leaving Atkinson, which our analysis, we've added 16, if I did the math right, 16 right turns to Atkinson.
So my point is this. Right now, Atkinson is an E.
Mhm.
Kelsey's going to be an E. Okay, we agree on that. If you take a right on Kelsey, you go in less than a mile, and people are trying to come out of Atkinson. They can't do it now anyway, because 138 is backed up. What I'm saying the report is failing to show us is between Kelsey and Atkinson, what kind of a delay are you going to impose that is currently going on. There's no one coming out of Kelsey for all practical purposes now. So if it takes you a minute and a half, right, from Kelsey to Atkinson, which is taking longer, because that road's, 138's really backed up, it's gonna take longer. So what you're doing is you're causing more problems on 138. Yeah, 138 can handle it slower. It's missing. I need that. You're not giving
Okay.
us the time it's gonna take to go from one E to another E. And more importantly, adding these cars to 138, anybody who lives in Stoughton going up 138 north to the center of town knows that they're gonna be stuck in traffic probably from the Tedeschi food shop, right?
Oh, yeah.
All the way up to the center.
During the
It's
peak,
almost
during,
like-
during
it's
the,
almost
during the
like-
peak.
Not to be
Correct.
crude, but it's almost like flushing your toilet and saying, hey, it's out of my house, I don't care where it's going. 138 heading north, the center of town, is gonna get impacted even more, which is gonna impact more side streets coming out on 138 north of Atkinson. But the ray of hope is something that you put in here, by the way. I don't know if you recall it or not. You wrote in here for a recommendation.
All right, I put it
No,
in
you did,
there.
hey, good credit with credit's due.
Um,
While the analysis shows the proposed project can be accommodated on the study area work, several recommendations have been made to enhance the transportation system. I'd like to know if anybody has recommended to the traffic committee in Stoughton, which I believe is what, the selectmen, or the police department, to do something at the center of town, right, to alleviate 138 north that you're going to impact even more. And you're going to impact it at a lower area. Right now, it's impacted from the center of town south to probably Tedeschi, sometimes even south of that. But I honestly believe you're going to impact it between Kelsey and Atkinson, because you can't get out of Atkinson now.
Okay, can I say,
So people in Atkinson are going to gun it to try to get ahead. It's just not going to happen. I'd like
Okay.
to see that in the study here, and it isn't.
well, I think the information is in there, and with all due respect, I think there's a couple of different things that nothing you're saying is wrong, except some spots mixing apples with oranges a little bit. All right, so Atkinson, people are delayed getting out of Atkinson today, and the extension, and they're going to be in the future. What we've shown is with the additional, and I'll preface it a little bit of, we already have an approved project. I mean, the volume is going to be added as the homes built, whether they're age restricted or not age restricted. So it's not like we're, in theory, I'm really not adding anything, but let's say right now, Atkinson Ave extension, they're delayed. They're going to be delayed a little bit more in the future, whether it's under just background growth or developments in Easton or this development. The people leaving Kelsey and turning right on Kelsey, and in the afternoon, it's a greater delay to get out of Kelsey, but the volumes leaving Kelsey are lower. And the reason, I mean, the volumes are a little bit higher on Washington Street in the afternoon than they are in the morning. Once they turn onto Washington Street, they're not in theory delayed. Now, in the crunch time, maybe in the morning, going into the center, which I thought the town had done a lot of center-related work in the last 10 years. Now, I don't know if, I think it gears to safety more maybe than moving traffic through faster. But, once they started adding a little bit more of the signalization and turn restrictions, I mean, that's a little bit of, you got 27 and 138 coming in at the same spot. So there is going to be some delay there. But in theory, the additional traffic we're adding, once they take a right onto out of Kelsey onto Washington, they're in the main traffic stream. They're moving along. They're not, if we're adding 20 cars in an hour, that's one car every 3 minutes, an average, even an expert person in traffic would not be able to pick up that difference just by being in the traffic stream. One additional vehicle every 3 minutes moving north on Washington. Now, are they slowed down because the signals are in town or the train stops traffic? So, you know, you start to build up a little queue and then traffic's moving slower. Yeah, but we do have data in the report with the count station north of Kelsey that tells you how fast people are driving every hour of the day, every 15 minutes. Traffic is moving on Washington Street. I know if you're out there, you're going to see in the morning peak hour, the afternoon peak hour, there's a lot more traffic than at 11 a.m. or 1 p.m. So you perceive that, you know, boy, I can't get through this, or you get up to the center and that's where you're really stuck. So I don't know, maybe you transfer it to like the whole 1 to 2 mile stretch, but the data that we've collected over a 48-hour period shows speeds to be fairly high going northbound on Washington Street all day long. Now, that said, as you add a little bit more traffic going past Atkinson Ave Extension, then in theory, those vehicles leaving Atkinson, not even counting the additional traffic we're adding to Atkinson, they could be delayed a little bit more. And our analysis has shown they're going to be delayed an increase of about 5 or 6 seconds.
My concern is the bottleneck that's going to be between Kelsey and Atkinson.
That will not be because of the additional 20 vehicles. Absolutely not. The side street movements are what's stopped. There's no signals along this section for quite a while. So you don't have even an instance where you're going to create a bottleneck because someone gets a red light and then you start to build up. Are we adding traffic as this development grows and gets constructed? Yes. Most of it on you know, the larger portion of the development is off of Kelsey, so that comes out there more. During the peak times, our analysis showed we could be at level service E, and what it showed is that we're not changing virtually anything at the Atkinson Ave extension. They're delayed now. It's not going to change it that much, and the level of service stays about the same. Sumner, they can get out, and we've just gone over Kelsey. So in every case, the analysis has shown capacity on both Washington and Sumner to accept the additional traffic. It's shown, you know, relatively small increases. Most of the increases, like we've just been talking, will be towards north on Washington Street, and the other roads will get increases, but on a smaller scale. We don't see the analysis showing us any queue problems on any of those approaches. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen occasionally. If you come down the extension and there's, you know, 10 people show up at the same time and 2 vehicles are trying to take a left out of the 10.
That's what rush hour is all about.
Yeah, but I agree, but I mean, we're not going to add to that queue. We're not going to change to any substantial degree what would happen on that approach or Kelsey Drive approach without the project. Kelsey Drive certainly gets a more noticeable change in volume because very low volume, a smaller number of homes right now, where Atkinson Ave Extension and Atkinson Ave right now serves a pretty broad neighborhood, so they're getting a fair amount of volume on every end. That's, and we've shown left turn entering, both of those locations with the project, without the project, can be done with short delay and causing no problems on Washington Street in making that move. So I agree with you. I mean, Washington Street's carrying 13,700 vehicles. So it's not going to be free flow all the time during the day. It's a moderately high, moderate to moderately high.
You really can't expect them to do anything with 138 because that's state road to start with. And if Elliot wants to spend a little extra money, he can put an overpass through Stoughton Center, so he can avoid Stoughton Center. That's the only way you're gonna fix that.
That's more, yeah, that's probably more of the issue as anything else on that section of road.
So I understand that. Steve? Okay, I had a couple of questions. I got lost here someplace. We're gonna build 104 houses total. I don't understand how you come up with 10 or 12 trips at a time. 10 or 12 more cars coming at a time, because the majority of people that are gonna live there, if the restriction is taken off, would be people that are going to work. They're gonna have to find a way to get out. They're either gonna get out at Atkinson Ave Extension, Kelsey Drive Extension, Kelsey Drive, or onto Sumner Street. I just...
Well, in terms of,
I never could understand these traffic reports, because it never seems to come out with the same kind of numbers that the people that are living there are gonna be leaving or coming.
well, sometimes I think, if you're not working with these numbers all the time, sometimes it can be a little confusing, particularly if, a question I would get a lot of times is, and I think you're referring to this, the comparison between age-restricted and, a lot of times we go to meetings and someone will go, you're building 20 houses, every house is going to have 2 cars, and you're telling me there's 15 trips coming out in the peak hour? I mean, you don't have 40, And, we go through that whole thing. I mean, it's a question, probably out of 1,000 or 2,000 meetings, I probably got it 50% of the time. But we look at so much data and we measure different kinds of land uses, and, 30% of the workforce might leave during the peak hour in the morning, and you got a 4 or 5 hour spread, and that's why, that doesn't occur. You get the 15 and not the 40 in that 1 hour. The age restricted, it's not just people who aren't working. In fact, many age restricted do work. What the age restricted is, you don't have the kids in there, so you don't have maybe the additional recreational or errands or school or, after school activities type of trips. So the numbers are a little bit lower, but in fact, when we start looking at some of the age restricted projections, there is a morning peak hour that they do leave the site, probably going to work, and in the afternoon coming back. The numbers are a little bit lower than the traditional single-family home, but what this reflected was, under the current proposal, there's 70 total homes to be built, including the single-family plus the age-restricted. What this column is under the current proposal, we lose 8 or reduce that development by 8 units of housing. So it's a little bit of combination where the age-restricted will have a little bit lower trip rate per unit, but we've deleted 8 units over here, and that's why, we do show a little bit of an increase over the currently approved project, but there's more units under that program.
Now, I'm taking it for granted what you were saying was, you were thinking of putting some approach signs. Now, are you talking about approach signs on 138, like before Kelsey Drive and Atkinson Ave?
Yeah.
Or on Atkinson Ave and Kelsey Drive?
I believe we talked about, like Eston Road, Atkinson, a stop sign and stop bar, where those things aren't existing, you do something like that on the approach. What we're talking about, the advance warning on Sumner and 138 are the yellow signs that show intersection ahead. So you might 300 feet if you're coming from the north, 300 feet before you reach Kelsey. Might be a warning sign reminding the driver there's an intersection up on your left.
Okay.
They're not essential, we just saw them as something to enhance safety.
And then the other question that would go along with that, where that's a state road, wouldn't we have to get permission from the state to put those in? I know the town would allow it, but I'm not sure whether the state would allow it.
Well, Sumner, we won't need then state permission. I would have to, if it's state jurisdiction in that exact location, we probably will need DOT concurrence if we're putting it within the right-of-way.
Okay. That's about all I had.
I have a question.
Mr. Malloy.
I have a question. On part of your recommendations, you recommended an installation of a stop sign and a stop bar. What is a stop bar?
It's the marking on the pavement, the bar across, we're showing you where to stop.
My second comment is that there is between Kelsey Drive and Atkinson Avenue Extension a strip mall that has a gym that probably has between 30 and 50 cars in there at any given time during the day, and they're popping out of there very quickly in the morning to get to work. Had the study at all recognized that?
Well, we didn't study that directly, but all our data includes all of that volume on Washington Street at both of our intersections. So,
I would think that that would impact the cars that would be in queue waiting to get out as well there as well as Atkinson Avenue Extension.
that's not going to affect the queue on Atkinson Ave Extension or the queue on Kelsey as it relates to our project-related traffic. They may be delayed on their driveway to, again, enter Washington Street, similar to an unsignalized intersection. I mean, we studied the two public ways, not the driveway at the.
No, but my point being that there are cars entering and leaving that particular strip mall at a pretty good volume during the day, and particularly in the early part of the morning and late in the afternoon.
All I can say is it's far enough away from these intersections not to affect a motorist's decision to enter or exit Atkinson Ave Extension or Kelsey, and the sight distances are very good at both of these locations so that they can see what's happening if another vehicle is approaching, that left that gym area, for an example. But it really, I mean, in terms of its influence, if it's attracting traffic down into this section, then we've incorporated that. We've counted it. We've got it in the numbers on Washington Street, and that's how it would affect someone's ability to enter and exit. Is if that had a large effect on adding traffic to Washington Street in this section, then all of our analysis reflects that and takes that into account. And we're far enough away from their leaving their site that's not going to affect our decisions at these other intersections, in my opinion.
That's it.
Anybody in the audience that has any questions? That's it on the traffic. Is there a wish from the board? Do we want to make a motion on this, or? Yeah, to accept it? No? Okay. All right. Part of the record. Okay.
Right. And he might give us a couple more.
Okay. What else do we have? We have a traffic study, peer review, water and sewer.
Ilana. Something, right?
Should we continue on with Mr. Marchant? Mr. Marchant, would you like to get under the light? Where'd I put his report?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Ed Marchant. I'm a 40B advisor. I've worked with 48 municipalities on 101 40B projects, but I've also worked with 32 developers on 44 projects. And as I understand, my charge was to do a financial review of the two pro formas that were submitted to you. You have my report. I'm not going to go through it word for word. I'm going to try to summarize it and then address any questions that you might have. I should note that I thought the level of sophistication in the preparation of the pro formas was better than most pro formas I review. In particular, and obviously because this serves the purpose of the developer in making his request, he did a cash flow statement throughout for the entire sales period. That's the only valid way to analyze a for-sale project. If you looked at the pro forma for the 104-unit project that included 32 age-restricted units, the bottom line showed a loss of approximately $800,000. Now, when I review a pro forma, I don't pretend that I know the exact numbers. The developer knows the numbers better than I do. My understanding is that Mr. Schneider is an experienced developer. I look at the numbers and I see if anything is really out of whack, if there's something unreasonable. There were a few numbers that I thought at first glance were unreasonable. One were, the biggest number was site improvements. I called Mr. Schneider. I know he told me his bank thought the same when they saw that number. I asked him to provide some backup for that. He immediately sent me a copy of the actual estimate from the subcontractor who is in fact performing the work for the Phase 1 roads, the A, B, C, and D roads. He used that, he interpolated from that to come up with the total cost. As you're aware, that is a challenging site in terms of its topography and in particular its ledge. So when I looked at that, I thought after reviewing the supplemental materials that that was a reasonable number. The land, on the other hand, was less expensive in terms of a per unit cost than I normally see. The land was at about $13,500 $500 per unit, but that just goes to show that there's a reason it was probably that amount given the site conditions. I would normally expect to see land in the $20,000 to $25,000 per unit range. The other line item that jumped out is not being within the normal range that I see on 40B projects were legal fees. When I asked, and I had been advised beforehand, that this project has had an unusual history of litigation. So again, I thought that was, that explained that difference. I thought that there are a few critical numbers when you look at any pro forma. One is the land cost. The land cost in this instance was reasonable, but the high site improvement costs reflect that because you almost have to look at those extraordinary site development costs as a land cost. I look at the construction cost per square foot. That's the other critical number. because that represents the biggest portion of cost in a project. That was $111 a square foot. These are, I think, and again, I didn't go into the houses, I've been to the site. They're good quality houses, they're not luxury houses, but I thought $111 a square foot was a reasonable number for that. And the other critical assumption in reviewing any pro forma is the projected sales price. And I thought at the time, for the time this pro forma was prepared, which was in February, the assumed sales price of $395,000 for the unrestricted market home was reasonable. This project is unusual in that it's already underway. So we don't have to do that much guesswork in terms of achieved sales prices. And when I asked Mr. Schneider about that, he asked his marketing agent to prepare a report and send that to me. And again, I could have searched that. I could have gone to the well, not to the Registry of Deeds. I would have gone to a reporting service, but those numbers are public knowledge. When I looked at those numbers, I did an average for houses that were either sold or under a purchase and sale agreement, and the average sales price for the sales to date, or P&S agreements to date, was $417,000. So that was higher, but still within a reasonable range. So my summary is, I think the $800,000 or a negative number is a reasonable conclusion based upon reasonable assumptions. In my report, I tried to illustrate what leads to that, and there are two things. One, the assumption in terms of sales of those units is 1 every 3 months. The assumption for the sale of unrestricted units is 2 units per month. You all know time is money, and that there are certain costs that are variable with the time that's involved in doing the project. Now, there's a big range in terms of sort of what the potential profit of a project might be. But clearly, if the pro forma is negative $800,000, it takes a lot to get that to a point that the HAC, the Housing Appeals Committee, would consider to be an economic project. The accepted standard now is a return on cost of at least 15%. So there's this pretty wide gap. Even with the unrestricted project, Mr. Schneider's pro forma showed a return of less than 5%. And I would say most prudent builders, if they were looking at a deal today that they weren't committed to, that they already hadn't sunk a lot of money in, would say a 5% return, given the risks involved, is not a prudent, it's not a satisfactory return. That the reward is not commensurate with the risk. Now, I would expect, given the pattern in terms of those sales prices, that the actual returns will be greater than 5%. That's easy for me to say, but what I like to do is do a sensitivity analysis to see what would it take for a developer to reach that 15% point. So on the last page of my report, you'll see that sensitivity analysis, and based upon my assumptions, and these are assumptions, I think sales prices will increase. The market is has begun to recover, but when demand increases, people go out and build, and costs increase. So I made some assumptions. I assumed I did a sensitivity analysis with a range of a 5 to 17% increase in sales prices for the market rate units, an increase in the sale of the affordable prices of 2%, and a general increase of costs of 4%. Now again, those are my assumptions. I think they're probably reasonable for an analysis like this. What it says is that the market sales price would have to increase 17% from the $395,000 to reach that 15% economic standard, and the average sales price would need to be $462,000. That's probably above and beyond what my scope is for this project, but I thought you might be interested in that. I always like to, and I'm not sure I have too much more to say in terms of the actual analysis, but having done that and having concluded that the project with the 32 units of restricted housing was economic, I said, well, you clearly wanted, you wouldn't have had it as a condition in your comprehensive permit if there weren't reasons why you wanted to have the 32 32 age-restricted homes. When I've worked with developers on age-restricted projects, I know that there are some critical design issues. Any smart developer knows that if you're going to sell age-restricted units, you have to have a first-floor master bedroom with an attached bath. You should have a second bedroom, which could be located on the first floor, but it could also be located on the second floor. You should have not a one-car garage, a two-car garage, with only a few steps from the garage into the unit, and it should be located on a site where you don't have any unusual sort of climbing step conditions. Now, when I looked at the website, none of the three models that were on that website, the Seton, the Preston, or the Sterlington, offered a house that would be attractive to an empty nester buyer. So I thought I would recommend for your consideration possibly asking, possibly requiring, or having a condition that requires that there be a model offered, there'd be a model advertised that would in fact be attractive to an empty nester buyer. And we call that sort of trying to attract empty nesters by design, not by regulation. That there's not a legal requirement that the unit be sold to a household with at least one person 55 years of age or older, but at least you've got a shot at attracting some of those empty nesters that I think was your objective in creating this comprehensive permit. You can see on page 6 that I expand that a bit, and if that's something you think makes sense, then you need to take, the developer has to, you don't wait until the end of the deal, you start thinking about that now. You identify the sites that topographically could accommodate an empty nester unit. You come up with a design, and I know Mr. Schneider knows what the design requirements are because the designs that he submitted for the age-restricted units were perfectly suitable designs. Those were all going to be clustered in one area, and it wasn't so important that they blend with the design of the colonials, pretty straightforward colonials that are being built now. There may be a design that would better complement those existing designs. What I've also found is the decision-making process for empty nesters is a very slow process without a lot of imagination. They like to see a model. If it can be furnished, that's even better. And so I think that's what you would need to do. This project is a large project. It's going to take a while, even for the unrestricted project. The completion date was June of 2016. The market is improving. The empty nester market, as the general market improves, the empty nester market improves. What hurts the empty nester market is a stagnant general overall market, because they're dependent upon selling their houses to move into a house that better meets their physical needs. There's not a huge sense of urgency. In fact, there's almost no urgency for them to make the move. So they have to feel they're getting a reasonable sales price when they sell their house in order to buy this new house and hopefully put a little money in their pockets too. So those are, again, that's beyond my normal role. You can take those recommendations for what they're worth. My basic conclusion is it is still very difficult to sell age-restricted units. And I'd be happy to address any questions you might have.
I have a question. Are you saying that the models that you looked at would not be an attractive model to attract an over 55 population?
The 3 models on the website would be totally unattractive to an empty nester buyer because they don't have a first floor master bedroom. The models he showed for his age-restricted units were fine, the floor plans were fine.
Well, what would be unattractive about the ones that you saw if the floor model is, I'm confused. On one
No,
hand,
the houses that are being built now
yeah,
are not designed to be attractive
Right.
to empty nesters. When I reviewed the drawings that were submitted, I think as part of the negotiation for the restricted models, those floor plans were fine. The only comment I'm making is I'm suggesting that you don't isolate one area for the age-restricted units, because that would be sort of waiting until the end. I thought if you said, hey, begin picking out some sites as you build now, and see if you can attract empty nesters to them. The distinction I make, and I understand why it may be confusing, is that previously you had one section of the site with 32 units, and the design of those units from the curb were different from the models that were proposed for the unrestricted units. That was fine because they were all together. If now you're going to integrate those units within the existing development, you might rethink the design on the units that would be attractive to empty nesters. That's all. But they have to have a first floor master bedroom with an attached bath, 2-car garage preferably, and a second bedroom.
But those preferences now exist in the restricted units design?
Yes.
Okay. And you're suggesting also that a model be set up because that is something that is appealing to the folks who would qualify for the restricted units?
If you really want a commitment from the developer that he's going to try to attract empty nesters, that commitment can best be expressed by building a model.
Are there specific ways to market an over 55 population cluster?
Yes.
What would those be?
Well, there are specialists in doing that, but it begins with your advertising and where that advertising is directed, and making sure websites are important, and you want to make people aware that they can buy I think this is a attractive neighborhood. You just want people to know that, yes, that there's an opportunity to buy a house that will meet their needs. And there are a lot of age-qualified people who say, hey, I have nothing against kids. I'd like to sort of live in a neighborhood with kids. So it takes a conscious effort, and anybody and I think Mr. Schneider's probably pretty good at marketing, he would know how to do that. And particularly if he's invested by having built that model. And then I view this as a win-win. I think it's aligned sort of interests, that you're expanding the pool of potential buyers. If you're expanding the pool, hopefully you can sell them quicker. And that's what builders want to do. They want to sort of complete the project, maximize their return, and move on to the next project.
Thank you.
With regards to the analysis for the non-age restricted pro forma, would you agree that that pro forma shows that the housing would also be uneconomic if they built a non-age restricted development?
The return would be less than 15%, but I've always taken the view that that's the developer's business. And the new guidelines, what the new guidelines say, and you may be aware of this, they refer to reasonable return. And I've always argued that if a developer thinks it's a reasonable return, then that's a reasonable return. And there are many developers today who, if they could break even, would consider that a reasonable return because they have so much money invested in it. And as one of my bosses told me once, a dollar you don't lose is a dollar you make. So in these times, there are developers, there are subcontractors who are doing work for returns that are much lower than the margins. If we went to the glory days of 2005, 2006, the returns were significant. Of course, on 40Bs, they were restricted. But those returns could have been in the 25, 30% range. And today, people are sometimes saying, hey, if I can keep this organization going and intact, and developers are optimists by nature. I think, developers are saying, hey, the market's beginning to recover, can sell these for a little bit more, and I'd like to think that the actual returns are going to be greater than 5%. And that's why I did that sensitivity analysis. And I think there's a trend in terms of the sales prices on this project, and they're increasing. Now, it's tough to analyze those sales prices because builders make money on the upgrades and options. And as I noted in my report, the margins are normally bigger on those, but there are also costs associated with it. So it would take a much more detailed analysis than I was prepared or paid to do to really get at that level of detail.
How realistic do you think that $462,000 sale price is for these units? The ones that would get you to a 15% return under your sensitivity analysis?
Well, if you take a look at the exhibit I included, Exhibit B, there are two outliers there, and the last two. That there are there's one at 502,000, and my guess is, and I think I spoke with Elliot about that, that one's got all the bells and whistles in terms of some buyers will just go in there and they'll really add a lot to the house. but there's also a 452. So I think that's, based upon this, I think that's a possibility. What I don't know is how much costs might increase. We're seeing increases in drywall and some other materials. Some of the, asphalts actually come down a bit. So it's tough to come up with a really accurate number, but I think it's a possibility. I hope so, because the sensitivity of this is, who knows? The market appears to be going up, but it could go down again. And when your margins are that small, a small decrease in the sales price of a home can wipe out any profits very easily.
With regards to the recommendation about doing an age restriction by design, so the project is in two separate sections, and the age-restricted area is in the lower part off of 138. But the area that's being built right now is separate. There's no, they don't interconnect in any way. So is your thought that you would want to incorporate the or the empty nest attractive models into the area that's being built currently, or into the area that?
No, again, that's beyond my
Right.
role here, but if you're trying to capture or retain as many of the 32 as you can, I'd begin now and integrate it with the building that's going on. Because remember now, not all sites will be totally suitable. There'll be some grade conditions that will make it more difficult to do those those homes that would be attractive.
And then, I guess to the developer, did you use model homes in your current?
We don't use model homes. The bank, everything's nice in the abstract, but the bank hasn't given us any money for any spec houses.
But you have done spec houses, I thought.
Yeah, with our own funds.
Right.
The bank hasn't done it.
But do you have model homes right now in where you're at?
I have a
Well, we're trying to distinguish. It's a bit of semantics. There's a spec house, which is a house you build without a sale, purchase, and sale agreement. You could call this, it doesn't necessarily have to be a model home.
Right.
I think the best way to do it would be a spec house with the floor plan that would be attractive to an
Yeah.
empty nester is like a model house.
Right.
Now, he didn't furnish the spec house, so it might be unreasonable to expect him to furnish a spec house that was designed to attract an empty nester. But it's the idea of getting something up that people can walk in, see, touch, and feel, that says, hey, this would be a great place for us to live.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
I don't have any questions right now.
So I looked at the website, and the site plan there's a 42 lot site plan, and it says that 30 of them are sold. Is that not accurate?
That's inaccurate. I don't think
There weren't 30 sold when, I have a report that's current as of April 2nd, and there were only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 sold or under a signed purchase and sale agreement. I'm not sure what's happened since April 2nd, but to get from 11 to 30. I did not include the affordable units. There are some affordable units that have been sold that are not included here.
Okay.
They were not relevant to this analysis.
Okay. No, I mean, it's GoddardHighlands.com, right? Or something like that.
I'm sorry?
It's GoddardHighlands.com or something like that.
Yes.
Yes. All right. No, I mean, I just looked at the site plan. It's got the map of the 42 lots on the streets, and then it just has big red sold stickers on 30 of them.
Those
So
include the affordable homes.
so that the 30, it would go up to 30?
It's 10 affordables, but it's not.
Mm. Okay. All right. That's what's
Very
there.
often, developers will put sold or reserved
Mhm.
on the affordable homes
Okay.
to create an impression, I would do the same, that these homes are selling quickly.
Got it. So you refer to a report by Quentin Hughes?
Yes.
Is that a publicly available report, or is that just prepared for this hearing? Is that?
No, that was submitted to the board
Oh, it was?
to
Okay.
back up the request for modification.
All right. That's probably before my time. That's before my time.
There was an original report dated October 25th, 2012, which was then updated on January 25th,
Okay. Fair enough. I wasn't here yet. So.
13. And I thought those reports were reasonable.
Sure.
It examined local projects and gave a summary of each, and were not inconsistent with my general sense of that age-restricted market performance data.
Do you have any thoughts on the similarly situated developments that have had age restrictions lifted? What percentage actually end up with 55-plus residents?
I don't have any experience on that.
Okay.
But you will not attract. There are people who've done age-restricted developments with the wrong design. I don't know how I can make a lot of mistakes, but the industry knows what it takes to sell those units, and yet people will still sort of come up with a wrong design, even though they are restricted in terms of whom they can sell them to.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I guess I have a question for Mr. Snyder. Would you do an empty nester house? I'm not saying build it, but would you put like, you're selling the houses now off of the internet, or you make a blueprint and show it, and that's what the people buy through. You don't put a spec house up. Is that correct?
No, we have put some spec houses up, yes.
Oh, you have put?
I think we'd be very willing to incorporate Ed's design suggestions in our marketing, aggressively market. Essentially, I think the real big thing that empty nesters are looking for is a first floor master. It's called, the concept is called aging in place, which we've probably done anyway without realizing it, but no stairs. And we'd be very glad to work with the building inspector or some people on the board coming up with some designs, market them to very specifically to people that are age restricted or in some magazines, et cetera, that they might be looking at. and see if we could put something together to make it more attractive to that market.
Well, then my other question would come, you're putting up a house, I think if I remember correctly, it was 26 by 36.
In general, yes. Yeah.
If you build, and I'm just gonna use the term empty nester house, which would be basically like a ranch house,
Doesn't have to be a ranch house, but it could be.
but doesn't a ranch-style house take up more land than,
We've actually looked at that, and we can design a plan that meets those specifications and market that a ranch house.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I'm just curious because at one time I was told that. Well, that's all the questions I have.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Sir.
That's all the questions I had.
What's the difference in prices between the houses you're selling now versus the empty nester house? What do you think that's going to sell?
The difference in the pro forma was $329 for the age-restricted home versus $395.
And so your profit margin obviously is lower on those, correct?
I think what we put into the pro forma was a price that we felt we could sell that house for, but we would lose money to do it. Following me? Okay, so it wasn't, it was, you know, these houses probably, with the time that it took to sell those houses and the price that it cost to build those houses, in the length of time that it took to sell them, we would end up losing. And so that we'd have to design something that would fit into the architecture of what we're selling and be something that would, in a similar price range, that would attract an empty nester. And I think the way that we do that is with some type of a first floor master and less of development that's upstairs, and also offer a ranch design.
I mean, I think it's, I think his recommendations certainly have merit.
I agree.
The only thing I would like to prevent, if at all possible, is if there is a price difference and you're losing money on those, there's going to be no incentive in trying to sell them,
Which is why I'm
obviously.
telling you that we'd have to come up with a model that's saleable. And to say that we're not going to be able to put up a two-bedroom home and sell it for the same price that we're selling a four-bedroom or three-bedroom home. So we'll have to come up, there are other designs that incorporate a first-floor master and a nice living room arrangement with a couple of bedrooms upstairs for the kids if they come to visit. But they look similar to what we're building now, and they're going to be priced similarly, or we wouldn't be able to do it.
And that's the point I was trying to make,
Yeah.
and didn't explain it as clearly as that. You want these houses to blend in. You want them to be the same vocabulary. They're going to be different on the inside, but look like they belong from the outside.
Okay. That's it.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, it would be a model you would design that would fit with what you already have, as well as a ranch style that would fit with what you already have?
Yeah.
And then find ways, you could identify lots where those would be able to work?
You can put them on almost any lot
You
that
could.
we really have.
So if we came up with some sort of proportionate number, I mean, when I've been involved in projects before where you've kind of changed a model, after the project started being built, I've seen boards create a little bit of a, a minimum proportion or minimum number of different styles.
Then we're getting into an age restriction again.
Well, not as an age restriction, but just because you want to make sure that the style gets incorporated in, especially up here where you've started building, a way to make it look more.
Well, Marguerite, in all honesty, okay, I really don't want to come back here again. And, if we sell out everything else that we have, we're willing to bring to the board, these models for your approval, to market them, to incorporate them in our website, and do whatever we can to sell them, to draw these empty nesters into our development. In fact, we have some, okay? It's not everybody there has a family. We've already drawn single people in, but we'll do our best to do it. But I'm certainly not going to put ourselves from the frying pan into the fire, because we can't do it,
If I may, I think your suggestion just now goes beyond what Ed is recommending, because it may not, in the so many words, require it to be age restricted, and it would be interspersed, as Ed explained. But if a designated number has to be that design, if it's as difficult to sell them as we say they are, and as Ed has concurred with, that's where Ed says, that's where my client says he can't go into the fire. To be required, even though you don't call it an age restriction, but that style unit be X number or interspersed every few houses, whatever, to equal a certain number, it's virtually the same as an age restriction. So in good faith, and I do say with sincerity, it's been a good relationship. You do have somebody who is a good and experienced and developer with integrity, but so there has to be a little bit of good faith. He has said, no questions asked, he agrees with the recommendation to do some good marketing, as Ed suggested, and all of that, but to go beyond that, I think, doesn't solve the problem. Thanks.
I guess my thought is simply just that I haven't seen the styles. I suspect you're going to do what you can to make them look similar, but you do already have 20 some odd homes under your existing styles. So when I've seen this done before, I've seen it done where there's some type of way to try to make this look like it's interspersed. If we had started without the homes being marketed, presumably you would have been thinking about having all the different styles built throughout, and it wouldn't. That's the idea behind the 40B, is that you're trying to have different style homes built throughout, and it doesn't look like there's one area or one type of home that's being given just for the affordable units, for instance. So my thought is just, is there a way that we could, and I'm not saying that you have to hit a number, but there's a minimum number.
As a matter of fact, all the affordable homes are the same homes as the market homes. They're not a different home.
Right. But my thought was just simply trying to come up with a way to make it not look like at this stage you started building the style home. So all of the homes in the first part, you do have open lots right now in some of these, and if you're putting up a spec house, why couldn't one of the spec houses be one of the style homes that you're looking at?
Could be.
As a way to try to make it look like that type of home was, to the extent possible, part of the original design of the project. That was my thought. And I'm not suggesting it would be a required number. It would more be a minimum type of proportion. When I've seen it done where, 5% of the homes need to look like this. And if it can't be, you come back and you talk to us.
We're talking about an interior design.
Okay. It's hard because I haven't seen the styles that you're looking at, other than what was in the original decision. I'm assuming that's not what you're looking at. Is that true?
That's what I just asked you. I pulled up the approved age restricted.
That's not what we're looking at.
Right. So it's hard to have a complete conversation about this till I've seen exactly what you're looking at, thinking about. But I don't mind that you have some flexibility in that, because I recognize.
Right. The fact is, as was mentioned, the footprint requirements for an empty nester attractive home is larger. But if you take a look at the models that are being advertised, one of the options is, I think, a family room. So although you don't have room on the sides, there are certain sites that will accommodate a family room to the rear. So you've got some room to work with, and I think that's the developer's sort of job and business to come up with a suitable design that, from what I just heard, he expects to sort of submit them and someone can review them. But I think there are aligned interests here. He needs to make those units attractive. They shouldn't stand out like a sore thumb. I think there's a way to do that. And more importantly, I think the applicant has said he's willing to do it, and he thinks he can do it.
Are you saying abandon the idea of a single cluster for an over 55 population?
Oh, I never recommended that.
No, I know, but I think that in the original plan,
Yes.
it has that. You're saying abandon that and integrate these.
Integrate them. And if this catches on, my guess is you'll see more being done. But I would not wait until, no, I would not do that. I think that gets closer to the age-restricted.
So if that is something that's
Original.
agreeable with the developer, then he abandons the clustered area of over 55, integrates them within the development right now so that they comport with the designs that are already out there, that are already.
He's asking to eliminate the 32 units.
But before we
restricted.
eliminate that, what I'm thinking is that if we abandon the cluster, have them integrated, and have an aggressive marketing plan for the integrated over 55 units, let's see how we do with that.
Exactly.
Well, I think this, if I may, I think there's still a misunderstanding. If you're suggesting that, but still having an age restriction requirement.
let's see how we do it
Number
during the
one,
aggressive plan.
that's not what we're saying respectfully, and
not.
that's not what Mr. Marchand is saying. We cannot agree to that. It's suicide, and we
I don't
prove
know-
that.
I
Number
don't know
one.
that
Number
that's
two,
what Mr.
number
Marchand
two,
is saying.
which should end the discussion, no matter how anybody feels about it. A council can explain further. That would be illegal. Under the Fair Housing Act, you cannot have age restriction interspersed. It has to be an integrated, segregated, that's usually a bad word, but under the fair housing law, federally and state, you have to have that locus that is strictly prohibited. So we can't do it legally.
Mr. Chairman, if I can respond to that, that is accurate. The reason why it's clustered now is because federal law does have prohibitions against age discrimination, but there are exceptions, and the exception for 55 and over housing is when you have a cluster, such as what you see with Phase 2 coming off of the Kelsey Drive portion of the development. So what I understand has been discussed this evening is the potential for removing the age restriction overall and then having a model that would be attractive to empty nesters, but that model would be available to be sited anywhere within the overall project in both phases, both in the lower phase and in the upper phase. And one other thing, Mr. Chairman, if I may, since we likely won't have Mr. Marchand here again due to cost constraints, if I can just go through to make sure that the record is clear on the affordability issues that are before the board, if I may. Mr. Marchand, can you just confirm, your report, as I understand it, indicates that with the age restriction, the project is uneconomic.
Correct.
And in the event that the age restriction is removed, it is economic. It has approximately a 5% profit return.
It's economic. I assume the applicant would not have submitted that pro forma if he didn't think it was economic.
And
So it's economic in the eyes of the applicant. I would say if in fact that was the real deal, I don't think many developers would want to do it. But he's already committed to this project.
then in the event that you were of the opinion that actually the project is uneconomic, even without the restriction, would it be your opinion that it's rendered significantly more uneconomic with the age restriction?
Absolutely.
Because that's the standard, obviously.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a big difference between losing $800,000 and making $1.6 million or $1.7 million.
Because the case law obviously distinguishes between
Yes.
those situations where only the age restriction renders it uneconomic and you have an economic project versus a project that's not economic at all but is made significantly more uneconomic by the age restriction. Okay, thank you for that clarification. One other thing, can you explain to the board when or approximately when the project became uneconomic as a result of the age restriction?
There were many projects as indicated, there were several projects as indicated, and I was involved with some age-restricted projects myself, advising developers that hit the market at the right time. It's all about timing, and if you were selling age-restricted in 2005, 2006, maybe the beginning, parts of 2007, the demand was very strong for that. Why? Because the demand overall was strong. You could sell your house at a price higher than you thought you would get and move to a type of housing that better suited your needs. And that's what, this market tracks the general market. If the general market is booming, you've got the opportunity to sell your house, buy a new house, probably smaller. Very often, it was structured as a condominium, so you didn't have to worry about maintenance. When you can't sell your house, you simply don't have that option. Everything is stagnant. So, beginning in 2008, it became difficult to sell, and it became almost impossible to finance, to get a construction lender who would lend on age-restricted projects. The agencies who issue project eligibility letters became very conservative on any for-sale project, let alone an age-restricted project.
And Mr. Chairman, one final question. Can you indicate whether those conditions have worsened in the last 2 years, say since May of 2011? Or have they gotten better? Have they gotten worse? What's happened in the last 2 years?
Well, I can certainly say in the last, things have picked up in the last year, and I think the trend is it's better. This is a local business. It depends on that local market. There are some areas that have been less affected in terms of sales prices and sales volume than others. But if you're in one of those markets that was impacted, then the market's just beginning, I would say, just beginning to recover. That's despite record low, thank goodness, there are low interest. The good news is the low interest rates. The bad news is people are still having an incredibly difficult time qualifying. These are very often, despite the price, and if you're my age, $395,000 sounds like a lot of money for a house. There's still first-time home buyers, many of them.
Excuse me, were you referring to the age restriction?
I'm referring to the age restriction, that the age-restricted units became difficult to sell. I think you said, in your opinion, that began in around 2007.
Along with everything else.
Through 2010. Has it gotten...
And if you take a look at his report...
Have the economic conditions changed or worsened in the last 2 years?
I think they've got better.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Anybody in the audience have any questions? Well, if there are no more questions. What's the wish of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if you're going to ask us more questions, et cetera, deliberate, whatever, but just rather than have to keep the hearing open for only the submission of what Mr. Scully did as a supplement, I apologize for its large size, but I would like to submit it. Again, I don't mean to be presumptuous about whether you're going to close the hearing, but I didn't want this to be the only reason that, that you would have to. So he can send us, and we can email to your secretary the smaller size, but beneficially we do have that data that you went over.
And Mr. Chairman, in the event that you intended to close the hearing, I would just remind the board that typically you have a draft decision that you consider and discuss with the applicant before you close the hearing so that you can have a back and forth with the applicant.
I do.
You said we should get.
We'll make a more draft decision.
Oh, okay.
My only point is that once you close the hearing, you can no longer have a back and forth. There was a discussion about drafting a condition and looking at models and so on that might be provided by Mr. Schneider, and perhaps having a going back and forth between council as to what that condition would look like. My only point is that to have that back and forth, the public hearing should remain open.
Well, and I think it would be helpful also to just, not just have the chart, but just a supplemental document that shows that your analysis doesn't change for level of service, et cetera. I think the testimony that was given tonight is that without the age restriction, the level of service remains the same as with the age restriction. So it would be helpful to have that as part of the record, I feel.
No, you can't have it back. You gave it to me.
That's the big piece. That's But, Mr. Chairman, I thought we had a couple of other pieces of data we were looking for. From the last meeting.
What did I do with it? You talking what I had to ask about? What did I do? Right here.
I think we got some update from the engineering department, and then you, I believe, spoke to the school department, and I thought town council was going to provide us with some commentary about whether or not we had to do anything with the plans.
The question that arose the last time that I was here, which was in February at the opening of the public hearing, related to the regulatory agreement. And certainly my recommendation would be that in the event of an approval of the modification, that it be subject to the condition that the regulatory agreement has to be modified in accordance with all of the requirements of law.
And weren't you also going to go back and look at the house styles, whether they were a part of the decision or? I had notes here that there was going to be an opinion about house styles. I remembered a discussion.
I recall certainly about the regulatory agreement.
Okay.
I don't recall about the house sizes, but certainly I can look at that.
I think there was a question about whether or not the house styles.
Yeah, I think you're right that there was a question, but I think that we did answer it that night because the plans were specifically part of the amendment to the decision that was approved. So I think that's why there's no further information on it. There are specific house plans that are approved, and we are building, at least so far, we are building in accordance with those approved plans.
But I think if I recall, the question was about lots 43 through 74, the affordable, not the affordable, the age-restricted lots, whether there was a specific plan.
There was. Again, that's what I showed Mr. Schneider a few minutes ago. At the end of the series of sheets that are attached to the decision, the amended decision, there are the ones that have, and I recognize my handwriting, that have at the top age-restricted units. And there are multiple plans. But I think that because we addressed that, and if we go forward, or if you go forward as we discussed, that becomes a moot point because we agree that we would be submitting revised age-restricted, revised empty nester, attractive, whatever semantics we use, units for your approval.
Yeah, there was something about the bedrooms.
Yes, you asked about that too, and Ilana did find the section that there's a limit, there's a total limit, there's no more than 4, and it is already covered. I could look for it again and find it for you, but it is in there, and we're not seeking to change that.
I think that's right.
And that's not being requested for a change.
Right, no, we're not
Okay.
requesting a change on that. No, we're not requesting a change in the total number of bedrooms.
There is a total
It's definitely in here. Again, Ilana found it last time quicker than I, and we could have a race again, but it is in here.
It is in there. I think we had it on the record the last time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that question was asked before.
One of the other questions that we brought up and I was checking on was the school buses. And when I talked to the school, just so you know, the school now takes a bus and goes up Atkinson Ave, and I believe it stops at the top of the hill, and that's where they pick the children up. And on Kelsey Drive, I think he told me that they go down Kelsey Drive and they just back into a spot. They all congregate there and they get into the bus. The question was, I believe, will the school bus be able to go down the roadways that Mr. Schneider's building and pick up the children? And according, I can't remember the man's name, I didn't write it down, but he told me that the school buses do not go down the side streets. They only go down the main street, they turn around, and they come back out. So that was sort of a, if you want to take a school bus, they have to congregate in a place. They don't go down the streets.
Joel Harding.
I talked to the fire chief, and the fire chief said he had absolutely no problems with this. He, I guess he talked to Mr. Schneider before, and they had to move some hydrants and put them around in different spots or something. But other than that, he had no problems with the project. I couldn't get a hold of the police chief because he was home in bed. But as far as I've understood from the fire and from the school, there's no problems at all. And that's where I'm at. So, saying that, what's the wish of the board?
I remember the question around school buses was because we thought potentially there may be some concerns with traffic and parking, but there is a parcel up here where that school bus stops. I don't know if there's how large that is.
I thought you said Joel said they don't go down that street.
They don't go down the street, they go down Kelsey Drive.
Oh, they do
And
go
they-
down.
And they stop, and
stop
if you look
here,
at the map that they got, they just back into
No,
that one spot, right here. That's
Yeah,
where they
no,
turn around.
I went and looked at the spot.
Oh.
It's not a real turnaround.
No,
it's
it's
a-
not a
it's a
turnaround, but they just
dirt
back
road,
in there
yeah.
and the kids get in it and there's,
Here, up here, or here?
no, on Kelsey.
Right on the,
This is
end of
Kelsey.
Kelsey
Right here.
Drive.
Right up here.
Yeah.
So people would probably be driving down and waiting for their kids at these two spots.
And I've noticed, due to the fact that I live off of Sumner Street, I watch every morning in Southeastern Regional and the Stoughton school bus. The parents bring the kids up to the end of the street and the school bus comes down Sumner Street. The kids get on at Sumner Street and they continue on. It's not like they go down Shirley Road and Duncan Road, which they can just go around if they had to, but they don't go down the side streets. Southeastern doesn't go down them at all. They just pick them up on Sumner Street. So when I talked to Joel, he said that that's what they'd have to do, is they'd have to just meet the buses.
Right.
I think that was the only ones I had. I talked to Mr. Tinsdale, he made out a report. Mr. Schneider made a traffic study, and we have a peer review.
So the report from the town engineer asks the board to approve changes that they're recommending pending the result of a feasibility study and the approval of the property owner. I think it might be worthwhile. Have you seen the report of the town engineer?
No, and I sorry, I couldn't hear what you said he was
I'm
recommending.
sorry, the report of the town engineer that we received, it's dated February 20th,
Had to do with the storage.
the sewerage. There were some recommendations about moving the current proposed location of the pump station is number 1, increasing the pump station lot size is number 2, and number 3 is to change the current capacity and design of the pump station.
What was the,
Yeah, yeah, I thought I misunderstood. I think we probably do have that, but that discussion is separate from the impact of removing the age restriction. He's not purporting to say that those items are requested because of the request to remove the age restriction. It basically is part of an ongoing discussion with my client, which I don't know the status, but again, you can corroborate that, but I know that those comments are not because of the fact that there are impacts caused by the increase. We have adequate capacity, whether it's age restricted or not.
I had notes from the last hearing that said we were going to get water and sewer to opine about the capacity for this hearing.
That is true. Yeah,
We already have sufficient permits.
we,
Board of Selectmen,
Look,
the state.
Jim Pavlik is here, and I brought a copy of the permit, although I don't think I need to submit it, but maybe Jim should just summarize it in probably 2 sentences. But my understanding was that as with the school bus inquiry and the fire department, that somebody from the board was going to check with the sewer department. In fact, I think there was a member of the commission or a selectman or somebody who was here at the last hearing who said he would tell you guys that. So that's why we didn't get anything separate. I mean,
That's
again,
okay.
Jim, if you want to
What
just
the-
briefly explain it.
If I can just say before Jim speaks, what, gentleman, Mr. Batchelder, I had a meeting, and he asked me if we would be willing to modify the pump station so that the direction of flow would not be up to Daily Drive and would actually have the capacity to go towards downtown to pick up the sewage that's flowing down Atkinson Avenue. And I told him that we would. And in fact, what we're designing the project to do now is to take our current flow and push it up the hill through our development out to Daily Drive, but with the capacity so that we can change direction. Actually, the sewage flows down the development, goes into the pump station, and then there's a force main that takes it all the way up to the Daily Drive station. But we actually made a sewer gift of $50,000 to upgrade that station, but he's concerned about the Atkinson Ave pump station. So what we're doing, voluntarily, by the way, is we're modifying our design so that we will eventually be able to take the sewage that comes down our development and change the flow so that it goes down, it'll be able to go down Washington Street and eventually pick up whatever businesses, et cetera, are down in that area. And so that they'll be able to develop that area, which is somewhat developable. Unfortunately, there'll be more traffic, there'll be more tax revenue.
Yeah, so that is the ongoing discussion, but the point is it will help the town, but not because we're creating more of an impact. So Jim, I don't know, maybe just a 1-sentence summary.
Sure, I can state that the Board of Selectmen has approved the project for a water and sewer capacity that equates to an average of 3.5 bedrooms per home for the total 104 homes. So removing the age restriction has no effect on that capacity.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Well, I mean, I was assuming town council was going to be involved in this, Mr. Chairman?
To put together the decision?
I'll make a motion, we draft a decision with the recommendations of the traffic study and Mr. Marchion's report in removing the age restriction on the section, but also including
The empty nest design.
the empty nesters, one home.
And I'd also like some, maybe with the supplemental traffic report, we might be able to get some further conditions around signage in that residential area up in Daly Drive in Easton. I mean, maybe, I know it doesn't do a lot, but slow children, corner, some of that stuff might be helpful. Whatever I'm comfortable with whatever the traffic.
The only thing I would ask, especially, and because of the fact we're going to do a draft of the condition, rather than to make it pretty ironclad that there shall be a model home constructed, that we, for the moment, we agree in your motion and vote that it would be subject to the condition as it's worked out. I mean, if we don't agree to language and you insist on that when we have the next hearing, final hearing, so be it, but I just want to be straightforward on that. I think we can work on something that hopefully would be agreeable to you and us, but right now it sounds like it's already binding that we build the model. And I'd like just the flexibility to work on that with your council and present it to you for the next hearing.
I don't have a problem with the councils working it out. I mean, there's some direction that I think we can at least give about what we're interested in seeing so that it's helpful to council, but.
And of course, the condition that the regulatory agreement is going to have to be modified as required.
Right. Condition with regards to modifying the regulatory agreement as required would also be added to that motion. No, I think that covers it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
So you need a date. You're going to continue the public hearing to another date so that you can look at that decision and discuss it with the applicant and get the traffic information?
There's a date I'm not going to make.
Who's check? Oh, you have, oh, okay. Oh, good, okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Check for 4,200. All right. That's amazing. That's the wrong name on it. I'd like to thank the board for the assistance. Who do I give this to? A copy of that. Can I erase town stone and put Evan? Thank you.
We need a date. Wait, we gotta get the date for the hearing. We gotta get the date for the hearing.
June 6th is fine for me.
6th, what time for you?
What time? I'm sorry?
June 6th?
June 6th?
I mean, it's probably okay. I can't do it on the 16th, and then there's
Sixth
Memorial.
is fine with me.
But June
They
6th?
either do it the 6th or the 20th.
Not around.
June 6th is good. Thank you.
Some plans.
We're not doing IKEA tonight, are we?
I think that was next month, wasn't it? I hope so, because I didn't look at it. Weren't they gonna fly down?
It would be 7:30.
I apologize, I guess Elliot just realized he's got something with his family, grandson or something. What would be your next date after the 6th?
I'm not available at that hearing, the 20th. I can't, I already have a commitment.
Would be July. Oh.
She's in the same meeting as me.
We want to get started on those.
Is there time on the 30th of May? Is there any availability, excuse me, availability on May 30th?
No, we don't have a meeting May 30th.
I already have
think it's the
something.
Monday before.
This is actually our last meeting for this month.
No, we have something on the 16th, but it's full, right?
The 16th, yeah. Look back, we got this, like here.
Yeah, we've got a lot.
Is there a problem with somebody for June 20th?
I have a conflict that night.
We only have one meeting in July, which would be the 18th.
Any appetite for one special meeting? I have to ask.
I would be open to it, except that I don't have many free nights between now and, but if we can come up with one, I want to give you forewarning. It's pretty tight.
So when do you want
To
to?
do a special meeting, like something other than the,
Yeah, can you?
I-
13th?
that doesn't work.
I can't do it the 30th. That's probably the only time I can't do it. I'll do it, that's the 6th, or the 13th. 13th of June.
June 13th, hold on. Yep, right now that works.
Huh?
I could do it then.
13th of June? That even gives you an extra week. Sorry? That even gives you an extra week.
Is that okay with you guys?
Sorry, it's hard to hear. Which date? June 13th?
Yeah.
June, yes, yeah, that works. Appreciate it.
Oh, how about you? You can make it. Yeah.
We would have that decision beforehand, though, to look at, right? Gotta get it to you a week ahead. Yeah, okay.
Eyeliner and I will have it tomorrow. Ha ha.
Which version, yours or hers?
Good question.
Okay. We'll have a special meeting, June 13th, 7:30. Decision for God.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Misha. Good luck. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
I don't know what's on. Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.